Welcome to the point of darkness.
The strange room had not always existed in the house. According to the neighbors, there used to be an ordinary storage closet at the end of the second floor where tools, jars, and winter clothes were kept. But after the owner died, the door somehow changed. It became taller, darker, and always looked as if someone had covered it with fresh varnish. The new owner of the house, Artem, did not believe such stories. He bought the house cheaply and planned to stay there only for one autumn. On the first evening he noticed that the door at the end of the corridor looked different from the others. There was no number on it, the handle felt icy cold, and thin scratches covered the frame. Artem decided they were marks left from old repairs. He tried to open the door, but it would not move. That night he woke up because of a strange sound. It was as if someone slowly dragged fingernails across wood. The scraping repeated again and again. Artem stepped into the corridor holding his phone and saw that the door was slightly open. Cold air drifted from the gap even though the heating worked at full power. Inside was a small room without windows. Dust covered everything, yet a perfectly clean chair stood in the center. Above it hung a bare light bulb that gently swayed despite the still air. Artem examined the walls and noticed something disturbing. The wallpaper had been pasted over old photographs. Eyes, pieces of faces, and pale hands peeked through the torn paper. He ripped away one strip of wallpaper. Underneath was a photograph of a boy about 10 years old. The boy sat in the same chair. His face looked blurred, but the eyes were horribly clear. Artem felt cold fear spreading through his chest and hurried out of the room. The next morning the door was closed again. Artem convinced himself he was simply exhausted from traveling. He drove into town for food and later spoke with an elderly neighbor. The moment she heard about the room, she turned pale and begged him never to remain near it after midnight. She explained that the previous owner had locked people inside that room years ago. Nobody knew why. At night the neighbors sometimes heard quiet conversations and crying through the walls. Then the owner disappeared without a trace. The police found nothing except an empty room with a chair. Artem returned home after dark. The house smelled of damp wood. When the clock struck midnight, the scraping started again upstairs. This time it was followed by footsteps. Slow dragging footsteps, as if someone barefoot wandered across the old floorboards. He climbed the stairs and saw that the door stood wider open than before. The light inside the room was on. Artem stepped closer and froze. The same boy from the photograph sat on the chair. Now his face was clear, pale skin, gray lips, and a smile far too wide. "You are late," the boy whispered. The light bulb flickered wildly. At that moment Artem heard another sound, breathing directly behind him. He spun around, but the corridor was empty. When he looked back, the boy was already standing beside the doorway. His legs bent strangely, as though the bones inside them had been broken. He moved closer until his face nearly touched Artem's and whispered, "Now you will stay here instead of me." The door slammed shut by itself. The light died instantly. Artem screamed and pounded on the door, but the wood felt soft, almost like wet fabric. Voices rose from the darkness. Dozens of voices repeated his name and begged him not to look toward the corner of the room. But Artem looked anyway. People stood there. So many people. Their bodies were pressed together while their faces remained hidden in shadow. Only their eyes reflected the weak flashing light bulb. All of them stared silently at him. Then one figure stepped forward. It was Artem himself. Older, pale, and empty-eyed. He smiled slowly and raised one trembling hand toward the chair in the center of the room.
Friends, thank you for watching to the end. If you don't mind, please support me with a like and a subscription. I'll see this and will make more and better videos. Thank you for your attention.